Saddam's son didn't go quietly. The shocking truth. In the final months of the Iraq War, deep inside a fractured nation and a collapsing dynasty, two figures who once walked with absolute confidence were about to face an ending no one expected. Uday Hussein, long feared for his explosive temper and notorious reputation, thought he would rule Iraq one day. Instead, his last hours turned into a violent storm of betrayal, desperation, and a confrontation so intense that even seasoned soldiers were shaken by what they witnessed. Tonight, we uncover the rarely told truth behind that final stand. The decisions, the miscalculations, and the chilling way power slipped through the fingers of a man who once believed he could not be touched. If you want to follow more stories that expose the final moments of the world's most powerful and feared figures, make sure to subscribe. There's much more ahead. To understand how Uday reached that final moment inside a villa torn apart by smoke and fire, we first have to understand the world he helped build. From the moment he was old enough to understand power, he was taught that consequences did not apply to him. He moved through elite schools with an entourage, issued orders few dared to challenge, and carried himself as the heir to an empire built by force. His younger brother, Qusay, was quieter and more controlled, but just as loyal to the system their father created. Together, they operated as extensions of Saddam's authority, each one shaping a different corner of the regime. Uday's rise became a symbol of fear. He oversaw institutions meant to celebrate national pride, turning them instead into spaces where failure was punished and loyalty was demanded without question. Athletes whispered of rooms where no sunlight entered. Coaches learned to lower their voices in his presence. Uday treated Iraq like a stage, and anyone who tried to perform outside his script paid a heavy price. His brother, meanwhile, supervised military and security forces with cold precision, managing operations that reshaped entire regions and displaced thousands. The difference between the two brothers was not kindness, it was style. Uday erupted outward, Qusay operated inward, and together they cast a long shadow across the lives of ordinary people. But even in a kingdom built on fear, cracks appeared. By the mid-1990s, Uday's violent temper led to a dramatic turning point. A public outburst at a party ended with the death of a man close to Saddam, a moment so reckless that even the dictator himself felt compelled to respond. Uday was briefly punished, sent abroad, and forced to step away from the inner circle. Yet he returned, unchanged and perhaps even more emboldened, continuing to operate with the certainty that no one would ever touch him. Then came the attempted ambush, an attack he never expected. While returning from one of his late-night routines, gunmen opened fire, hitting him multiple times. Uday survived, but his body would never fully recover. The limp, the pain, and the scars became a quiet reminder that even the most powerful can bleed. Still, his influence remained intact. The regime continued to shield him, and he continued to move through Baghdad with the confidence of someone who believed the world was his to command. Everything changed in 2003. As coalition forces began pushing into Iraq, Uday and Qusay were suddenly forced into a life they had never lived before, a life of hiding, uncertainty, and fear. Their father disappeared into secrecy, shifting from one location to another while loyalists tried to protect him. But Uday and Qusay stayed together. Survival, for them, was collective. They moved from one safe house to another, trying to outrun a military machine designed to track them down. Their names appeared in a deck of cards used by soldiers to identify high-value targets. Saddam was the ace of spades. Uday and Qusay followed shortly behind. Their faces were no longer symbols of authority. They were now symbols of a manhunt. By July of that year, the brothers chose Mosul as their refuge. They arrived at a villa owned by a man they believed they could trust. A longtime associate of the regime, someone who had profited from proximity to the ruling family. The villa was large, fortified, and situated in a neighborhood where support for the old leadership still lingered. It felt like a hiding place where they could rest, regroup, and plan their next move. But the promise of safety was an illusion. The same man who welcomed them soon realized that loyalty to a collapsing regime was a dangerous currency. With a multi-million-dollar reward on the table, and with the future of his family hanging in the balance, he made a choice that would change everything. He approached the nearest military base and revealed the brothers' exact location, offering detailed descriptions and the layout of the villa. The betrayal was complete. When coalition forces received the tip, they moved quickly. A plan was assembled in less than a day, combining airborne units and elite special operations teams. On the morning of July 22, 2003, soldiers surrounded the villa, sealing every exit. Loudspeakers were used to demand surrender, offering Uday and Kusei one final chance to walk out alive. The response was silence. Inside, the brothers prepared for their last stand. They positioned themselves upstairs, blocked entrances, and gathered the weapons they had left. With them was Kusei's teenage son, a child raised in a world of loyalty, power, and danger, now standing beside two men who were prepared to die rather than be taken. Moments later, gunfire erupted. The first shots flew from inside the villa, shattering windows and forcing soldiers to scramble for cover. The fighting escalated quickly. Each attempt to enter the building was met with bursts of gunfire so intense that elite soldiers were forced to retreat. Within minutes, several members of the assault team were injured, and commanders realized the brothers would not be captured without a devastating show of force. What followed was a siege that turned the villa into a battleground. Rockets slammed into the walls. Automatic weapons ripped through reinforced rooms. Helicopters circled overhead, watching the smoke rise. Yet Uday and Kusei continued firing, refusing every opportunity to surrender. The sound of gunfire echoed through the neighborhood, drawing families to the ground in their homes. What had once been a quiet district of Mosul became a war zone. Hours passed, and the villa began to collapse. Walls crumbled, furniture burned, the roof sagged under the pressure of repeated strikes. Still, the shooting continued. Uday's body, already weakened from past injuries, pushed through pain as he fired into the smoke. Each moment felt like an attempt to reclaim the power he once held. When commanders finally authorized the use of wire-guided missiles, the outcome became inevitable. The final barrage tore through the remaining structure, bringing an end to the resistance inside. When the firing stopped, soldiers entered what was left of the upper floor. There, amid rubble and dust, lay the bodies of Uday, Kusei, and the young boy who had refused to abandon them. Their identities were confirmed, their photos released, and the fear that had once surrounded their names began to dissolve. Iraq, shaken and divided, now faced the undeniable truth that the dynasty was collapsing. The sons of Saddam, once symbols of absolute authority, had fallen in ruins, not through quiet surrender, but through a final stand shaped by the very violence they had embodied for years.